Okay, first things first, ladies and gentlemen. We saw this yesterday and failed to mention it. I'm counting one American killed since last we chatted. And that American was killed in Afghanistan. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to know it has not been the worst year for deaths in Afghanistan and Iraq since January. And obviously we've had more Americans in Afghanistan and Iraq. However, what's been interesting is that it's been rather difficult to get the reports of deaths in Afghanistan and Iraq. Don't know why, but it has been difficult. I will say this, however. It is my sincere hope that regardless of the increased numbers we have in both Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria, that there's not been an increase in the deaths. Sincerely hope that. You know, with that said, folks, yet another entry into the hidden history of the African-American warrior, since we just lost an American in Iraq. No telling whether he is Republican, Democrat, red, blue, or African-American or Caucasian. Here are the hard numbers here, right here. I'm counting since our incursion into Operation Enduring Freedom and Operation Iraqi Freedom. In Afghanistan, 191 African-Americans have been killed, and in Operation Iraqi Freedom, 439 African-Americans have been killed. Now, this is not to say that I'm choosing not to recognize others who were killed, but I wanted you to know, and especially the alt-right or white supremacists to know. It's a multicultural Army, Navy, Marine Corps, service members there in Afghanistan and Iraq. And it's pretty significant, I don't mind telling you. Among the 18 to 44 age groups, African Americans make up 12% of the U.S. population, 17% of the Department of Defense forces. I said 17% of the Department of Defense forces, and experience greater than 9% of the total casualties. These are not just your United States, is the point. You know, now, that's not said nearly enough, especially on Oxy-conservative talk radio, who always paints the picture of G.I. Joe as being, not one of us. All right, folks, let's get to it. A lot to cover, short period of time. We're going to cover all of it. You know, it just gets worse. It just gets worse. And I know that there's some of you who listen to Rip Daniels and you say, oh, yeah, well, Rip just want to beat up on Trump, you call it. And I really don't. Just trust me, I would much rather sit here in this seat and feel quite confident in the man sitting in the Oval Office in the presidency. I don't. I just don't, folks. And this is not politics for me. And for those of you who listen to this show, I really would hope that you'd stop playing politics. Politics is over for me in this. Should be over for you too. The man's elected. He's chosen by the Electoral College, so be it. It is about competency. It is about competency, it's about character, and it's about the manipulation of our government by a person I think is a Manchurian president. And I'm going to tell you folks, I'm not the only one. I do. I think there's a reason why Vladimir Putin wanted him to win, and this didn't just start. There's a piece here in the New York Times coming from the Fusion GPS people that I'm gonna read, and you need to hear it because you need to hear both sides. You need to read it. You need to, and I've got the dossier right here, man. This is it. You want to see the dossier? That's it right there. The notes you see on it is my going through and just pinpointing what was proven to be erroneous, or at least no mention that is confirmed. Much of this is confirmed based on what we're hearing from Congress and what has leaked out from Congress and what I've heard even from the Justice Department. But first this, folks, and I don't know if you covered this while I was gone, Ro, but Donald John actually came out and said, and by the way, let me explain to you, for those who listen to both me and Oxy Conservative Talk, what Donald John is doing with his tweeting is this. He is maintaining his base. It has nothing to do with truth or honesty. It has more to do with his knowledge of just the sound bites. How many characters now do you get in tweets? I know they've increased the number of characters. You don't know? Okay.
It's like 260 something.
Well, whatever it is. He doesn't use that many because his vocabulary is not that large. And he doesn't speak in compound sentences. And look, I'm not saying it to be insulting. I'm describing it. Because the listeners and those who listen to Donald John doesn't have vast vocabulary, and they don't listen in compound sentences. There's no ands, buts, none of that. It's just simple sentences. And that is effective. It is effective for some who choose to be gullible. Hold on 2 cents. I'm going to get you. But he has, as a result of his television, and prior to that, it had more to do with his being the Playboy. He gets it. He gets it. He gets the idea that you don't have to satisfy everybody, just the crowd that's around you, just those who support you. That's why he always says nice things about me. It's always that. Even when he was talking about Shermer, who is retiring now, he said, "Oh yeah, I never forget the nice things he said about me." I mean, you just don't get any more narcissistic than that. The one thing you remember about a guy is the nice things he said about you. But he said this. He said that he had passed more legislation or signed more legislation than any other president. And, I know that, Ro, you and Judy may have covered it, but did y'all play his audio on this?
Yeah, we mentioned there is more audio to it, though. He actually mentioned it a couple times while he was meeting first responders down there in Florida.
We have more legislation passed, including the record was Harry Truman, a long time ago, and we broke that record. We have signed more legislation than anybody who broke the record of Harry Truman.
So he signed more legislation than Harry Truman.
Broke his record, according to him.
Broke his record. I mean, folks, look, you guys who want to be staunch supporters, you can't lower your standards, because people like me will look at you and go, well, what's wrong with you? I mean, you can't expect for us to have any kind of honorable conversation when you don't even confirm the fact that the guy is just sitting there bold-faced lying. I mean, he actually comes out and says that he passed more legislation, and I just don't know where he got that. Well, I do know where he got it. He got it from people who are telling him that. Donald Trump, where is he? He did 94, signed 94 bills. And by the way, half of those are just basically in-house bills that typically a president will sign now. It's not like there are some things that you go in and you sign as a president, as an administrator would do. Ordinarily, these things are going to come up, and you sign them and you move them on. Half of that 94 was that. George Bush signed 102, Ronald Reagan 108, President Barack Obama 118, Clinton 209 in the same period of time. John Kennedy signed 684, Dwight Eisenhower 514.
Now, that's a record he did break. For fewest bills signed, he beat Eisenhower's record there. For fewest bills signed.
Really?
Really.
So the question is then, is why would he say this? Was it just a slip? Then why would he pull out Truman? How many Truman signed, by the way? I'm looking here. Let's see.
Truman signed 126 bills in his first 100 days.
Very good. So let me tell you why. Because what he's doing is trying to establish that there were accomplishments. And he had more accomplishments. That's why there was great debate upon his being inaugurated regarding the largest crowd ever. For him, for Donald John, the P.T. Bonham here, for him, that is more important than anything else. That's why he was consistently talking about ratings, even after, winning the presidential nomination, talking to Arnold Schwarzenegger, I can get ratings. And I mean, his whole thing is that. His whole thing is television. And don't get me wrong, it's working. It's working on his base. But it isn't working with the rest of us. Because we are so far beyond the concept of politics. And you realize it was 3 days after he was inaugurated, he opened his campaign for presidency for the next 4 years. Now, folks, this is not, I'm describing it. Oh, there you go again, Rip. Ask yourself, am I saying anything that isn't true? Ask yourself that before you think that this is just a badge. I'm describing it. Not that it really matters in my mind how you want to figure what Rip's doing here. I'm concerned about this presidency, which means I'm concerned about the country. I mean, I'm at a point here where I'm going, when you go to the litany of tweets and so forth, you've got to ask yourself, is this guy, is he in the realm of reality? And then you got to ask, if I'm asking that about this guy and you support this guy, then I find myself looking at you kind of sideways like, what? Really? I mean, have you been working with a co-worker and they say some things and you go, what?
Yes, actually I have.
Really?
Really.
This guy has spent 1/3 of his presidency first year on the golf course.
What?
1/3.
Really?
Yep. And believe me, those standards were certainly pointed out, among Nazi conservatives as it applies to President Barack Obama. I've got the comparisons there too. Donald John has already beat President Barack Obama in his first term.
Beat him, that's right, really. Beat him.
He's been, I mean, folks, and listen to me. I take the same stance now as I did then, folks. You don't stop being the president because you're on a golf course. I mean, can you handle things on the golf course? Obviously you can. You guys want to get, all right, good. Where is it? I've got let's see, where is the totals here? Hang on here. The totals, here it is, right here. Has now spent more than 1/3 of his presidency at his properties and 1/4 at his golf clubs. Now, that's a big difference between him and President Barack Obama, for sure. President Barack Obama wasn't making money every time he went to his golf course. By the way, do you know that they're spending on average $10 million? $10 million each time he goes plays golf at his golf club. And do you know who makes the lion's share of that money? Well, you guessed it. Yes, of course, the Trump industry. How about that?
The blind trust.
Yeah, blind trust. It's blind trust, except for the fact that he goes to his golf courses. I mean, you can't make this up. You just can't. Trump has spent a significant chunk of his... Hey, I want to get to this. Okay, here we go. On Tuesday, when he ventured to Trump International Club there in Florida, Trump marked his 85th day at one of his golf clubs. I want to get to, let's see, that was December 26th. Okay, here it is. Added up, Trump has spent more than 33% of his presidency at the Trump property since taking office. And more than 25% of his days in office, Trump has at one of his golf clubs. And spending, on average, $10 million each time he takes that trip. And no comment from the conservative? Is this not big government?
He's working as he's golfing, really.
But it's his big government.
He's working as he's golfing. The president doesn't have a day off, right? He's working as he's hitting the links.
All right, and then there's this. Steve Bannon just came out and commented in The Guardian here. And I'm quoting here, folks. It's incredible. He's actually referring to that meeting that Butthead, I call him, Donald John Jr. had there at the Trump Tower with the Russians. He's saying they're going to crack Don Jr. like an egg on national television. What does he mean by that? That means that, okay, on the questioning, Don's going to crack?
Wow.
Well, he went on to say that what happened there was treasonous at best. You have it there, Ro?
Yeah, quoting Bannon here. 3 senior guys in the campaign thought it was a good idea to meet with a foreign government inside Trump Tower in the conference room on the 25th floor with no lawyers. They didn't have lawyers. Even if you thought this was not treasonous or unpatriotic or bad stuff, and I happen to think it's all of that, you should have called the FBI immediately.
Well, Bannon said that.
That's a quote.
Did he say treasonous?
Yes.
Ooh. Remember where you first heard the T word.
And unpatriotic and bad stuff.
And this was Donald John's chief. He was his closest advisor at one time.
Yeah, chief executive. Chief executive Breitbart, but yeah, close political advisor, foreign advisor.
Bannon's not too happy now that he lost in Alabama, I guess.
Well, and even beyond that, there was a rift growing from nominations of several folks, including Jeff Sessions, on up to the horrible situation there that occurred in Virginia, where the young lady lost her life. But yeah, now he's speaking out. The gloves are off after Alabama, it seems.
Well, let me just tell you, this guy Glenn R. Simpson and Peter Fitch has come forward here to defend themselves. They are these guys are the guys who are in charge of Fusion GPS.
Founders.
Yep.
And both former journalists, more importantly.
Fusion GPS, remember that? These are the ones who, the firm that was used by some Republican at first and then hired by the Clinton campaign, not hired/used by the Clinton campaign, to provide the dossier that I just showed you, which, by the way, you will hear on Oxyconservative Talk Radio, refuted now, bull crap. Much of it has been collaborated. I mean, I've gone through it. I've shared it with you, my audience. Even the part where he's at the Ritz-Carlton waiting for the 5 prostitutes. He said he didn't have anything to do with them. Even his bodyguard, who resigned, out of the myriad of those who resigned from this administration, said, I stayed at the door 5 minutes, and then I left. Why? I mean, all of this, you can't make this up. And I'm laughing only because it's so pathetic that our country is represented this way. Well, these guys here with the New York Times put the op-ed piece, and I'm just going to throw it out here. I can't sit here and tell you that is truthful. That is not. I can merely share with you what they wrote. And here is what it is. In the years since the publication of the so-called Steele dossier, the collection of intelligence reports we commissioned about Donald Trump, I would say Donald John henceforth, ties to Russia, the president has repeatedly attacked us on Twitter. His allies in Congress have dug through our bank records and sought to tarnish our firm to punish us for highlights his links to Russia. Conservative news outlets and even our former employer, the Wall Street Journal, have spun a succession of mendacious conspiracy theories about our motives and backers. We are happy to correct the record now. In fact, we already have. 3 congressional committees have heard over 21 hours of testimony from our firm, Fusion GPS. In those sessions, we toppled the far right's conspiracy theories and explained how the Washington Free Beacon and the Clinton campaign, the Republican and Democratic founders of our Trump research, separately came to hire us in the first place. We walked investigators through our year-long effort to decipher Mr. Trump's complex business past, of which the Steele dossier is but one chapter, and they're right about that. And we handed over our relevant bank records while drawing the line at a fishing expedition for the records of companies we work for that have nothing to do with the Trump case. Republicans have refused to release full transcripts of our firm's testimony, even as they selectively leak details to media outlets on the far right. And we have asked for that information, and they have not released it. I mean, the congressman, some of what they testified to was behind closed doors, and so consequently, it's up to the chairman to release that information that they have not. Maybe it's because of the Mueller investigation that has asked them not to. I don't know. They continue. It's time to share what our company told investigators. We don't believe the Steele dossier was the trigger for the FBI investigation into Russian meddling. As we told the Senate Judiciary Committee in August, our sources said the dossier was taken so seriously because it corroborated reports the Bureau had, speaking of the FBI Bureau, the Bureau had received from other sources, including one inside of the Trump campaign. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, it is not unusual for CIA and every other investigative organization to investigate whoever is dealing with Russia or Iran or North Korea or let's see, I would say anyone with having dealings with Syria or with Turkey right now, for that matter. By the way, Turkey is really PO'd with Russia. I will continue. We don't believe this. Okay, here it is. Okay, here it is. The Intelligence Committee have known for months that credible allegations of collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia were pouring in from independent sources during the campaign. Yet lawmakers in the thrall of the president continues to watch a cynical campaign to portray us as the unwitting victims of Kremlin disinformation. Then this is what I told you it's going to come to. We suggested investigators look into the bank records of Deutsche Bank and others that were funding Mr. Trump's businesses. Congress appears uninterested in that tip. Reportedly, ours are the only bank records the House Intelligence Committee has subpoenaed. And the reason why they did that was to see whether or not who paid for how much did Clinton pay or will it Mitt Romney or whoever paid them. I've got the dossier here. Read through it. I'm going to tell you something, folks. I don't know how any Trump supporter could not say, well why is he doing this? And because this is, you got to understand, this was all transpiring before he became president. You do realize, before he became president, while he was running, this was their collaboration to figure out how they would win or what was necessary. So it goes on and on. We told Congress that the Manhattan, we told Canada that from Manhattan to Sunny Isles Beach, Florida, and from Toronto to Panama, we found widespread evidence that Mr. Trump and his organization had worked with a wide array of dubious Russians in arranging that often raised questions about money laundering. Likewise, those deals don't seem to interest Congress.
Why?
We explained how, from our past journalistic work in Europe, we were deeply familiar with the political operatives Paul Manafort's coziness with Moscow and his financial ties to Russian oligarchs close to Vladimir Putin. They also know that the Russians were unaware of former British intelligence officer Christopher Steele worked for us. In other words, you got to understand, ladies and gentlemen, according to Fusion GPS, they debunked the biggest canard, being pushed by the president's men. The notion that we somehow knew of the June 9th, 2016 meeting in Trump Tower between the Russians and Donald John. They didn't. That's not even in the dossier, by the way. The dossier is based on an evaluation of Trump's dealings here, folks, and where he met with A and B individuals representing the Kremlin. What came back shocked us. Mr. Steele's sources in Russia, who were not paid, reported on an extensive and now confirmed effort by the Kremlin to help elect Donald John president. Mr. Steele saw this as a crime in progress and decided the need to report it to the FBI. Now, whether you believe that or not, I think that it certainly has merit, to be quite frank, after reading the dossier. What it reads like, ladies and gentlemen, is an evaluation and a watching of this guy, of any other operative, Trump people with Russia. Who wouldn't do that? Who would not see that as being a wise thing for the Central Intelligence Agency?
Sounds smart to me.
I mean, it just it's baffling for those not to see it. Which brings me to 2 cents. Good morning, 2 cents.
Good morning.
Yes, sir.
Oh, hold on.
Since you're on my screen, you want to talk about Hillary Clinton's email and her secretary?
No, not Hillary Clinton's emails. Huma Abedin.
Huma Abedin. Okay, yeah, and the emails. In other words, your
Emails, State Department passwords.
Yeah.
That's not a story. That's
You don't understand. This is. Go ahead and investigate it. I don't have a problem with that. No one's saying not to do that. If there's something.
But that's not. If there wasn't Trump, what would you talk about?
You do understand that the man has now questioned his own Justice Department. Do you think there's a deep state?
I agree.
You do. So
And
give me
the
some
real
proof.
estate.
Give me some proof of that.
Because you said the government doesn't run on elected politicians. It runs on the clerks and the the people who run it. That's the deep state, Dave.
That's thousands. That's thousands of clerks and so forth.
Thousands of them.
And many of those individuals voted for Donald John.
Well, I imagine several of them did. Probably several of them didn't.
Well, you do understand that it takes more than one. And when you say deep state, you're suggesting to me that there's some kind of coup going on.
Conspiracy? Well, I don't know about that.
Well, you still haven't given me. You still haven't given me the proof. Give me the proof of one clerk. Give me the proof of one clerk. We've already handled Hillary. I don't even want to hear about her anymore because I'm telling you, the Justice Department can investigate her. Trump said he would. He hadn't. Why didn't he? You're asking me questions that you should ask your boss. So why don't Trump just do it? He could do it. Answer that.
Well, I believe that's probably in the works. I mean,
Well,
that's what the IG is doing right
well
now.
then do it. In other words, just do it. So now let's can we?
I believe that ball's rolling.
So are you saying that because you're investigating Hillary, so since you're investigating Hillary, we should stop investigating Donald John? Is that what you're saying?
No, I think they should investigate the crap out of it. And
Okay, very good.
let's
Very
say
good. We
if-
agree. We agree then.
If one question, if or when this is over with, and there is no collusion by Donald Trump with the Russians to get elected, what are you going to do? What are you going to have? You're going to jump over to something else?
You know, I've always heard that if a frog didn't have legs, he'd bump his ass every time he jumped, wouldn't he?
He sure would.
Well, okay, so we don't deal in ifs. We deal in the realities here, right? Here's the reality. Here's the reality. You have a president here who has ties to Russia. Do you disagree?
He may have some ties to him,
Okay.
banking and stuff.
Okay, so now, with
But I
that
think it's
said,
collusion with them.
with that said, you do understand colluding. There's this colluding of money
What
and
did the
so forth.
Russians do? They bought some Facebook ads?
That's why you have investigation. For you to say that he may have some financial dealings with Russia speaks volumes, don't you think?
It's a global economy, Rip.
Well, listen to what I'm asking you, my friend. What I'm saying to you is we need to make sure, you do understand that if by chance this is more about making money than being the president, trust me, we have a guy who's in the office for financial reasons. Does that make you feel confident?
I believe he's in office to make America better for Americans
Do you?
and safer.
And so you've been convinced of that.
Oh, I am convinced, thoroughly convinced of that. I've seen
I
nothing to not tell me that is not the fact.
Well,
You're talking about all these things that he didn't sign, but you know there's a difference between a bill and legislation. He's rolled back more.
no, sir. Let me just tell you this: a bill is legislation. Executive order is an executive
Well,
order.
a bill is legislation, but there's a difference between. There's different kinds of legislation.
Well, all right. So why don't you stay in your lane here, 2 cents? So let's do this. But for the sake of discussion and because I appreciate you, I don't want to turn my head sideways on you. You feel as
You know
do
why
I.
you're turning your head sideways? It's because you're talking out the side of your mouth.
Well, because I'm talking to a person who's obviously is not capable of understanding my being straight
There's
up.
no evidence of collusion.
You
Rip.
just said that you favor the investigation. Do you not?
I think there should be an investigation
Okay.
so that everybody will have some kind of sense of the right thing was done.
Very good. I think, okay, so we are in agreement, sir, and so that is what's happening. So the president has just said, the president just said that the Justice Department that's investigating him is part of the deep state. Does that sound like?
No, I don't think that's what he's talking about.
And he also said that he could do with the Justice Department whatever he wants. Do you agree with that?
His picture's at the front door.
That is wrong. The Justice Department didn't swear an oath to him.
It's the head of the legislative branch.
You do understand that justice
is under his control.
You do understand that the Justice Department, the only thing that he influences in the Justice Department is the head of the Justice Department. You do realize that person...
He can fire anybody that works in the
Excuse
Department.
You do understand that person is confirmed by the Senate.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't understand that.
I understand.
I want you to go back to your civics lessons. I don't want to embarrass you.
I understand, Rip. You don't got to school me on it.
Well, but obviously you need to be schooled because you're talking out the side of your neck. Or some side. Maybe it's not your neck. So I appreciate that. I'm gone. By the way, I used that last part was what the president said. She's talking out of something. She's coming out of somewhere. She's bleeding out of somewhere.
Wherever.
This whole idea, do you realize there's checks and balances? Oh, I could do with the Justice Department what I want. No, you can't. Any person that he chooses as Attorney General has to be confirmed by the Senate. Does that sound like you can do whatever you want? You need to read what happened with one Tricky Dick Nixon when he tried the firing. You need to read that. This guy feels that he's beyond reproach because he can pay for it. And that anyone who works for him, which means anyone who's getting a federal government paycheck, should be loyal. Really? This is how I look at you, 2 cents. We'll be back.
Every day, more than 10,000 people are approaching retirement age, and many of them are not financially ready. Are you ready?